These two books, two Regency romance books, Jackson native and published author Fanny Kent. Hi, Fanny.
Thank you very much for having me, Bart.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Fanny, that's your nom de plume.
That is my author's name. Actually, in home life, I grew up here in Jackson as Joan Curran.
So people, I'm sure there's viewers who remember Joan Curran, who's now making fame and fortune with published romance novels. As I said before the show, I'm not a romance novel
I didn't expect that. No.
reader, but my wife reads.
Good.
But they're very popular genre.
Oh yeah. Well, Regency in particular, Regency is is an era of history. The Regency period is in the beginning of, or the early part of the 19th century England. The Regency period was to the 19th century what the Roaring Twenties was to the 20th century. The King George III, who was king during the American Revolution, was mentally ill, and so the Parliament declared his son, who became George IV, the regent. And his son was kind of a playboy, party boy, and so it was a really lively period of history. There was, Byron was writing poetry, and Beau Brummel was making fashion, and in Europe, Napoleon was making war everywhere. And so that was a big expansion of the British Army with their handsome red coats, and they were part of society. And Beethoven was making music in Vienna. I mean, it was a really kind of exciting time. And so this is the backdrop for my novels, but I do more of the kind of the down-to-earth side because I'm so into history. It's like I like to know how people ate and what they wore and all sorts of things like that. So I've got a little more of the down to earth because some of these Regency novels, we talked before the show that they made resurgence recently because of the Bridgerton novels and the Bridgerton TV shows. That is the Regency period, and so but those are pretty glamorous, and so mine are a little more down to earth.
Well, that's what I want to know. It's like, how did they, take showers or clean and get? How did they, eat, and what was that? I'm interested in that kind of stuff.
Oh, all right. Well, then they had servants.
Now is the Regency period applied just to Europe and Great Britain, or did we have that? Are your books set in?
They're set in England, yes. But what was the Regency period? What was fashionable there was fashionable here. Maybe a little behind, but it was fashionable here in this country, and so. It was called the Regency because George IV became the Prince Regent.
The Regent. Now, tell me how you chose your pen name, because we were talking before the show. Fanny. Well, I think of the Fanny Farmer cookbook, sure. Right?
Well, my great grandmother was Fanny, and my great aunt was Fanny. It's a family name.
Oh, neat.
But I really chose it through mine and my husband's middle names. My middle name is Francis, and my husband's middle name is Kent. And so I always thought, if I publish, I'll be Francis Kent. But thinking of the era in which I wrote, I thought, well, let's go for the Fanny, which is a derivative of Francis.
Well,
so that's where it came from.
And it does sound like that time period too.
Yeah, it does.
All right. So your books, are they standalone or?
They are.
Okay.
They are. Pennyroyal was the first one I wrote. And that one, both books, I have a connection to the British Army, because I found in these books, the Regency books, they always have, it's like the Duke's Dilemma and the Earl, and it's like, there could never possibly have been as many dukes as all these books write about. So I thought, let's be, to a family of gentry, but not necessarily royalty in these books. And in Pennyroyal, this young woman who's the heroine is the widow of a British Army officer, but she's destitute, has a young son, and her husband's commanding officer, who's also a widower, offers her an arranged marriage. And she isn't really sure why. Has he loved her from afar? Is it just for altruistic motives, or does he want her young son as an heir for Pennyroyal, which is the name of his estate.
Ooh.
And so he's not a person who says much. He's kind of stoic, and so she's not really sure why. And so we spend the book sort of finding out what is the background. There's a bit of a mystery because he had a wife who has passed away and nobody talks about her. And so that's the basis of the first book, Pennyroyal. And the second one, Miss
I wonder
Anne,
if he did something to his first wife.
I'm not saying. I'm not saying. Yeah.
I think he did.
Okay.
I think he might have poisoned her.
Okay. And then the second book, Miss Anne Chiswick, is a standalone. She is kind of a tomboy and the daughter of a clergyman, and her mother died young, and so she was kind of allowed to run a little wild and wants just to be, doesn't want to be, let's say, young girls coming out in society in that era were kind of taught to be simpering misses and not, and if they were intelligent, to hide it. And she wanted to be independent.
She doesn't look like a tomboy.
Well, she becomes a lady of fashion because she goes through kind of different phases. She has a life as a tomboy, and then she later on moves and lives with her then mother-in-law in London. And she says, well, if I want to be a lady of fashion, how would I go about doing it? And she discovers a best friend who would know all of that stuff. And she becomes, a lady of fashion, not by being rich or, highfalutin, but just by being, charming and sparkling, and she learns how. And then she decides that's not really a very deep life either. And so she just wants to be independent. But can you be independent as a woman in that era and still have romance? Yes, you can.
It sounds like you've been historically accurate.
I try very hard to be, yeah.
And that, I understand you are a genealogist, and you've done research on your own families.
Oh, yeah.
So do you go back, does you or your husband's family go back to Great Britain?
Yes, but my mother's family, my father's, the grandfathers are both from Ireland, and so that's different. But of the mother's sides, my mother's family in particular goes back to the Bassets, and they were Puritans. Thomas Bassett's first wife was burned as a witch, and then he came to America, and she married somebody again. So I'm not, I'm descended from that person. And we found that they came from, and both my husband's families, who were the Ellsworths, came from around the Cambridge region. And so they, I think, left and came to America earlier than the Regency period. So I don't have, my family in particular doesn't have a British connection to that period.
Now, among your friends and family and loved ones, will they see themselves, are they in these books in any way?
A little bit. Well, just because I might use a name, not really a character so much. It's like my sister is Peggy, and so I have where there is a modiste who is somebody who designs clothes, doing clothes for one of the characters in Miss Anne Chiswick, and her young assistant is Peggy, and she has one line. She says, "Yes, miss."
Awesome.
And so my sister made fun of it and says, "Yeah, we're descended from little Irish serving girls." It's like, yeah, that's true.
Well, at least she's in it. Now, these books are available at emilystreetpress.com and
Amazon Kindle.
Amazon Kindle. All right. Well, good luck. Hope you have great success with Pennyroyal and Miss Anne Chiswick.
And by the author Fanny Kent.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in today.
Delighted.
Yes, Fanny Kent, also known to her St. Mary's friends, Joan Curran, native of Jackson and author. Well, that's it. Thanks to Fanny and all of our guests on the show today. Tomorrow morning on the morning show, Randy Glick and David Schmidt from Alro, Dr. Randy Penn and Helita Gunn. Tomorrow afternoon, Tanya Berry, Therese Smith, Jacob Inocencio. We visit For Goodness Cakes and Tom Rooney. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.